Well, it wasn't easy, but the Celtics have lifted the curse. They've exercised that Warriors demon, and they emerge victorious, 121 to 118 in an absolute battle against the Golden State Warriors. We're going to talk all about it next on First to the Floor.
Who's going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually is.
Brown drives, layup on the glass.
It's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice his body.
Scoring it, knocked away.
Hey, welcome into another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Guys, wow, what a thriller. Wayne Spooney, Jake Eisenberg, both with us here. Spooney, we'll start with you. How are you feeling after that one?
Can you be simultaneously incredibly impressed and incredibly disappointed in how this team played? It's like, that's how I feel. It's like the farthest range of emotions and just opinion possible. It was like they'd have 3 possessions of perfect basketball and then throw it to the Warriors for a dunk. It just was bizarre.
The supernatural forces are at play when these two teams play. I don't know if there's any other explanation for what Marcus did on the last 2 inbounds plays and countless other plays, especially in the first 2.5 quarters. But the mental fortitude to fight demons, poltergeists, and ghosts and come away with a win on top of the Warriors and one of the greatest teams of all times. It's impressive.
Sensing a Ghostbusters themed thumbnail for this podcast after the fact. Eric Weiss in the chat. If a win could be summarized by a movie quote, this one would be, quote, "We're all stupider for having witnessed that, and may God have mercy on your soul." Presumably referring to the very latter portion of overtime where Marcus Smart seemed to be contracted by someone to lose the game on purpose, like throwing the ball away multiple times. For everyone, first of all, everyone in the chat, everyone listening later, thank you for joining us. This is going to be a rather unhinged approach to quote post-game analysis. We were running a live stream during the game. My heart is still beating out of my chest.
Yep.
Any attempts to sort of apply any sort of analytical viewpoint on this game was thrown right out the window, especially as the game started to turn around in favor of the Celtics. We will do our best. I suppose I'll start with asking, do you guys feel like and this is very in line with it not being analytical, do you guys feel like the curse, the Warriors specific curse has been exercised? It kind of feels like for them to fight back from being down, it felt like they were chasing their tail for so long in this game. Threes weren't going down. They came back. They somehow clawed and found a way to win. Do you feel like we've bursted through the ceiling there?
The fact that they're able to rally again, is so impressive. I was actually happy with them. I was willing to take the moral victory. I was like, we got it close. We were able to at least settle ourselves in order to play mostly positive basketball for the third quarter with 5 minutes to go and on. And Ben, everybody, if you haven't been on one of our playback live stream shows, we just came from there. And Ben was like, no, we must exercise these demons. We must win this game. We must destroy it and stick a stake through the heart of the monkey on the back. I do think there's something to it, though. Just mentally, we don't have to play the Warriors again now unless we get to the finals. And now our last memory of the Warriors is going to be managing the rough seas, the rough moments, the turnovers, the missed 3-pointers, the missed free throws, everything. The Steph Curry, oh my God, 2 Brogdon missed free throws, tip in on a loony shot clock buzzer beater, followed by a Tatum turnover, followed by a Steph Curry half-court shot, 7-point swing going into halftime. You get through all of that and you come away with a almost resounding win in overtime if Marcus Smart doesn't turn into me for the last 9 seconds of the overtime.
Is there something to we made a lot of the same mistakes and our shots weren't falling and then we still won the game? You know what I mean? It's in the finals when we won those 2 games, we really did it by shooting the lights out, especially game 1 in that fourth quarter. You remember we just ripped off 7 straight threes.
Hell yeah.
You're always going to get those games sometimes. To win a game where you're hot from 3 is not a big deal. To win a game when you can't get a 3 to go and you make some like bizarre errors. And, that was a physical game, dude. The refs were letting a lot go. If I had to say, they were slightly in favor of the Warriors, especially if you look at that Wiggins three-point foul.
Obviously.
Yeah.
It was egregious on multiple fronts.
But like the mental fortitude, like they played almost perfect basketball in overtime, except for that last 35 seconds or so. But man, that was an incredible overtime period. Now, I don't know about you guys, Ben, were you confident we were going to dominate overtime?
No, I'm never confident, even though I believe in the team rather. But like the energy shifted. We were talking about this in our playback stream at some point, like quite early in the fourth quarter. There was an energy shift and then a period of time. And then some shots started to go down in conjunction with that energy shift. And then they never really stopped that despite the unforced errors. They managed to hold on to that level of intensity. And they certainly carried that into the overtime period. And so I felt confidence in them using that to find a way or a path to victory. So in a way, it's easier to say in hindsight. I suppose I did feel confident. It felt like they sort of figured something out. What did you think, Jake?
Yeah, Dylan in the chat here, like, why when we play Golden State do we resort to the ISO ball? It is such a good question. And it was like from the jump. It was Tatum. Yes, we like the matchup against Poole going left. But he just throws up like a 14-foot floater that has no chance of going in. And eventually they got kind of back to, I would say, I'm definitely going back and watching at least the second half of this game. But it felt like, an 80-20 split of playing the right way and playing the wrong way, where we get 2 or 3 possessions in a row where it was Smart, Tatum, pick and roll. Tatum is the screener. Spoonie's got an awesome piece out about it or coming out about it. And then all of a sudden we would have Marcus Smart ISOing against Wiggins. And it was like, what? Do the things that are working. Don't go back to the things that haven't been working and have not worked for 5 straight games against the Golden State Warriors. It's an unanswerable question outside of like humans are not perfect creatures, and like these guys just were tired, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to go 1-on-1 against Wiggins here, and it's like too hard to set another screen and take another hit. I don't know the answer to why, because the Tatum Smart pick and roll was working over and over and over again, and then it was like we'd get 2 possessions where we didn't do it anymore. And it was like, spam this until they adjust, and then we can go from there. But until they do, there's no reason to not go back to this.
Yeah, the Warriors are probably, if other than the Celtics, maybe the most switch-happy team in the league. And, I mean, that's what the switching does, right? It's like, we're just going to you're going to ISO against Jordan Poole. We know you're going to ISO against our bad defenders, and if you get by them, we just send Draymond to hack you and probably not get a foul called. And I do think that, yeah, absolutely. Like there was too much ISO, but even a lot of the possessions where they played the right way and generated open threes, they clanged them. You know what I mean? Like there was, I think it was in the fourth quarter and end of the third quarter, they generated 4 or 5 wide open threes off great ball movement and then just missed. And that's why I was very not confident they were going to win this game, because it's just like, wow, you're going to have your bad possessions against the Warriors because that's how they just make teams play. And it's frustrating. And yeah, Jake, you're right. I think you can get to that Smart Tatum pick and roll, even if they're switching a bunch, get Tatum in the post, things like that. Wasn't happening enough. But even when we did play the right way, we missed a shot. So It's just frustrating, man.
That's why it's such a good win, though, because we suffered from, like you were saying, all the same ailments that we always do against quite a few teams this season, but particularly against the Warriors in recent history. And yet we found a way to win, which is just so huge to overcome that. I want to say maybe I'm going to fall short of saying the best win of the season, because there was just too many glaring mistakes there, I think, to really give them that much credit. But as far as the mental, it's up there. The mental fortitude to find a way to win that game. There's just unspeakable value and significance to that, as far as how this team probably feels about themselves and certainly about their sort of outward facing identity. Jake, who was the hero of this game? Like, was it Jason Tatum? It's probably the easy answer. Or was it someone maybe lurking in the shadows behind the scenes, setting up plays like Marcus Smart or someone else?
No, so I don't think it's Jason Tatum or Jalen Brown or Marcus Smart or Derek White or Malcolm Brogdon. I think there were 2 guys in particular that were the reasons they were able to actually complete a comeback and get back in this game. The only reason they were in this game was because of Robert Williams and Al Horford. Without those two guys playing at like a ridiculous level through the first 2.5 quarters, we would have been down 15-20, and it would have been too hard to come back. But Al Horford in the first quarter, Jalen and Jason were a mess. Al had 10, 5 boards, 2 assists, I think, in the first quarter. A break, he blocked a Jordan Poole breakaway. This is Al Horford off rest. I think it was a combination of rest and Al Horford understanding that like he needs to step up for these guys. Like Spoonie said it earlier today, like Al's been through this. Like playing against LeBron was an issue for Al, and clearly it has been something that has plagued the Jays so far, especially recently. And it felt like he had that sense in the first quarter, and to step up and have the quarter that he did, and then continue that through the next parts of the game. But then Rob, I posted this before the game started. I think Rob is kind of the key to winning this matchup tonight and just going forward if we end up meeting them in the finals as well. You can go to my Twitter and watch. Actually, I'll run the clip here. But game 3, I think, was the best Rob game as far as being healthy. And he, against this team, he gives them an outlet on offense. He's able to switch on defense and challenge Steph Curry in a way in that drop that Al Horford is just not able to do, that Cornette's clearly not able to do, as you see it there, challenging the shot and getting the rebound. He dominates Draymond and Looney on the offensive boards. Like, how many offensive boards did he have today? Seven offensive rebounds. He kept us alive over and over and over again. He was key, and defensively, like erasing shots, keep making guys think. Steph remembers what he was able to do to him in the healthy minutes in the finals. So Rob and Al, to me, are kind of the heroes of the game.
There were several times where it looked to me like Steph probably could have got a shot off, but because Rob was nearby, he didn't even bother. So his impact was absolutely huge. Every one of those offensive rebounds was so necessary, and like it felt like the game was slipping out of our hands, and then Rob somehow would grab the offensive board, put it back, find an open shooter. What's up, Lucas from Brazil? Glad you're joining us, man. That's wild. That's awesome. But I do want to say the 2 baffling late decisions from Marcus Smart probably overshadow what was a pretty damn good game from him, though. I mean,
oh my Lord,
never seen anything like it from him.
That was bizarre. Thankfully, Jalen Brown dove into the scorer's table, probably took out a few drinks, maybe, snagged a French fry off somebody while he was on his way by. And he saved that ball, and we held on to the game. But other than that, like Smart, we needed every bit of his 18 points tonight. 5 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals, a block. Thought he did as well as you can on Curry when he had to. And, I think he opened that overtime with that little fall away that he likes to get to, and that somehow rolled in. He really set the tone. He really set the tone in the overtime, I thought. So those 2 ghastly errors aside,
dude,
I thought he had a pretty good game. And Christian, shout out UMass. I used to live in Greeno. No, I didn't. Chadbourne. It's been a long time, but yeah.
No,
so I'll give it to Smart, even though I agree it's Rob or Al.
Yeah. No, Marcus, and early as well defensively, he got some tips, got them out on the break. Had a nice little cobra under the screen early as well. I'm not sure I've quite seen anything like those last 2 passes he made. That's unconscionable. Like, there was no reason for him to pass the ball back to Tatum. Like, you were
dribble. You're the point guard.
You are one of our best free throw shooters in the clutch. I trust you as much as I trust anybody getting fouled and going to the line. That was a complete. And that was a poltergeist type issue. Like, Marcus Smart is, only so much love and trust can save you against demons. So I am sympathetic in moments like that for sure.
other unsung heroes in this game, because I mean the story is there were some late game heroics from the Jays. Obviously Jalen Brown sending the game to overtime in the first place with like essentially the one good shot for him of the night. But there were a lot of unsung heroes. I mean, credit to JB. Once we hit overtime, he was super aggressive and some really good floater finishes in the paint, and he was like part of the reason why we pulled that game out in the end. But leading up to that point, you mentioned Al Horford, him like going at Wiggins early in the game, and like that was a mismatch that they were clearly hunting and executing out of with regularity. Grant Williams, you can see we got the box score up on screen here. Just 13 minutes in the game. We didn't see a lot of Grant, but I felt like he was really effective, particularly in his switch ability defensively in the small amount of time that he was out on the court. Luke Cornett, 7 minutes, 30 seconds, maybe 7 minutes longer than we needed.
No. So he was okay. And those 7 minutes meant that we could get Al played 37 tonight.
Yeah.
And Rob played 27. Like, we needed those 7 minutes. And Luke was actually okay. Like, he was a +3. Yeah, it was dicey.
That's for sure.
It was dicey. Was it perfect? No. And Jakob Poeltl, would he have done better against Steph Curry? Cool. No. This is not a matchup that Jakob Poeltl is going to help you in for those 7 minutes. Like, I think Luke allowed us and that allowed Al and Rob to just have like that extra juice just to carry us, keep us in there. But another little cheeky unsung hero was Brogger, the Brog Dog.
Big Brogger.
The big Brog Dog.
Brogger, mate.
Had some atrocious misses at the rim.
Yes, he did.
Oh, my Lord.
Truly horrible.
But I feel like this was one of the first games where I felt like he was scrapping. Like, I think a lot of the games this year, he's kind of fit the 6-man mold. You know, I'm a scorer. I'm not getting my jersey dirty tonight. But today he was getting on the boards, and only 2 offensive rebounds. I feel like he was getting his hands in there though, leading to other people getting those stats. Really, 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 really big as part of that whole push where everybody was like, okay, the shots aren't going in. We're going to play defense. We're going to get on the boards. We're going to get our hands in passing lanes. And I felt like he really bought into the mentality of that. And it's not something that we've seen a lot from him. So I really liked that he was able to kind of go in that direction and contribute to getting us back in the game.
Yeah, Brogdon's like 2 made layups away from actually having a really nice line, like 7 of 15 for 18, 7 and 2 would have been great. Z Gamer, the fact that he played 36 minutes and his knees didn't fall off is a great sign as well. So it sort of felt like outside of Al and Rob, nobody had I do not understand how we won this game. Tatum was 9 and 12. I mean, Tatum was a beast getting to the rim. Like, other than a couple turnovers, I do think he played the right way for the most part. He had about 2 or 3 bad ISO shots, but again, the Warriors are forcing you to take ISO shots sometimes. But 19 boards, like, he was everywhere on the glass. 6 assists, led the team, 3 steals for Tatum, but it wasn't a great game for Tatum at all. So it just was like,
not a great
I don't know.
game,
I'm just like
but
off my. I don't know what to say about this game. It just was so bizarre.
not a great game, but like firstly, he was like tracking at around even plus minus for most of the game. It was like, if Jalen Brown wasn't dragging him into the mud, he would have had a positive plus minus for the most part of the game. Like, he's 7 turnovers, very bad, and 3 of them late in the fourth quarter were atrocious. But 34, 19 boards, 6, and like you talk about, Brogdon being, buying into that scrappiness and that grittiness. I feel like Tatum was all in there. Like, he only had 2 offensive rebounds as well, but he was getting his hands everywhere. He was on the defensive boards. I think that kind of trickles down, right? When Tatum's like, okay, shots aren't falling. What else can we do? And I think that, that's what I want to see from Tatum. Like, clearly he didn't have it going. He was, mentally struggling with how to approach the game offensively, especially early. To see him do things the other way, that's kind of how I see him getting back into games. It's like, okay, lock in defensively, get on the offensive boards, get on the defensive boards, move the ball. You're going to play so hard that you basically don't there's no space to think about being anxious or being nervous. It's like, It's like it's honestly it's like going into a freezing cold tub. Like you have no choice but to like be in the moment. And I feel like he by the end of the game he played 48 minutes tonight. Like I imagine there was not a lot of thoughts going through his head outside of like, let's get up and down this court, let's play, let's switch. Like I'm locked in. And I felt like as the game went along, like he ended 4 for 13 from 3. I feel like the percentage of those threes were definitely later in the game. He had that really clutch one,
huge one, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think to stick with it and let the rest of the game lead back to his offense was fantastic.
A real captain's knock, you might say.
A real captain's knock.
I've had this up on screen for a little while, but this is per Taylor Snow, who I believe works for the Celtics media team. Jason Tatum is just the 5th player in Celtics history to record at least 34 points and 19 rebounds in a game. The others are Larry Bird, Dave Cowens, Robert Parrish, and Bill Russell. So in pretty good company there.
Yeah, not bad.
For JT.
Pretty good players.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're rudderless in this one. We're running. We're still actually dealing with our own personal emotions as it pertains to this game. What else stood out to you? Like I got a couple of notes here. I thought you mentioned it, Spoonie, that the refereeing just seemed blatantly unfair. Obviously, we're biased Celtics fans, but there were a couple of notable occurrences of poor refereeing. The foul call on Horford. I believe we challenged it. This is late in the game. Wiggins was shooting, ended up getting to the line for 3 attempts. Ball don't lie. I believe he missed one of them, but clearly not a foul. Also, the ball through Jalen's legs off Jordan Poole.
How did they overturn that?
Like it did not touch his foot.
The fact that they overturned that one and then didn't overturn the Horford one, like there was just nonsensical. And then we had the Jalen going for like the out of bounds, and it clearly went off Wiggins late as well, and that went in the way of the Warriors. We did get away with the Jordan Poole block.
Yeah, that's true, Brogdon. Well.
Yeah.
No, I didn't talk about that stuff. Come on.
Yeah. What are we doing here?
Yeah. No, I think I definitely no question. I think that it was late, especially. And dude, Tatum does not he ended up shooting 12 free throws, but man, they get away with a lot of contact on Jason. Like, man, I feel like you were talking about my son. I rarely call him Jason. Getting quite protective here.
Like, on first name basis. I love it.
They're all up in him. I have met both Brandy and Deuce, so we're
basically part of the family.
Yeah, exactly. yeah.
It's
sorry. Go ahead, Spoonie.
I was just gonna say, like, okay, it was horribly reffed, right? It was at 1 minute you're allowed to mug people, the next minute you're getting a touch foul called. Like, if you let Draymond Green play defense like that, where he can just beat you up every time you drive, like, it's going to be incredibly difficult to score and finish around the rim, because Draymond is the master of like getting up into people and making you uncomfortable. And then if you're allowing him to foul effectively, like, yeah, it's going to be really, really tough. So, it was just one of the worst ref games I can recall.
Yes, thank you, Ben. I also did it as well. Thank you, Justin, in the chat. What is Tatum's middle name? It is Christopher, which is a fantastic middle name for the purpose of getting either angry at Tatum and now we can be like, Jason Christopher, how dare you commit 7 turnovers, or how dare you touch my son, Jason Christopher, like that, Draymond Green. Beautiful.
I also apologies to Spoonie, who was busy making a very good point. I just like
all right,
with some Tatum middle name trivia talk. Okay. So other takeaways from this game as we try and gather our thoughts here. I think that was the first appearance of our previously dominant starting lineup from last year so far this season with the double bigs. Obviously, they didn't stick with that. We didn't close with that lineup, or we didn't run with it in OT. But just nice to see Joe being like, yeah, that worked. That worked pretty well last year. Think I might try that again. Will be interesting to see if that sort of continues to be a trend as the season progresses. Would you guys, any takeaways or thoughts on that starting lineup?
This is the worst team.
I know.
That starting lineup out again. This is like the one team I'd be fine with him going with like Grant instead of Al or something like that. But yeah, I think I like that he's willing to go back to it, but like, not today, Joe. Please, what are you doing?
Yeah, look, but at the same time, I understand because the Warriors announced before the game they're going to do the pool lineup, leave Looney coming off the bench. So I can understand wanting to kind of like, if this is a rock, paper, scissors or a fire, water, earth type situation, to go to our Pokemon references which we use when we're talking about Jalen Brown shooting free throws when the game's happening. Like, you're trying to use something that may be effective against what they're doing, and like you can kind of overpower them. It doesn't work. I know Rob wasn't super healthy for the most part in the finals, but it doesn't work against the Warriors. Like especially in transition when they are so good at man. Like the fact that they just know where to cut and where their teammates are cutting and where to find them. Like it caused so much confusion for the Celtics defense, like in transition and even in the half court as well, and off offensive rebounds. And when you have both Rob and Al out there, obviously Al had an incredible game, but how swift of foot he is to cover like Klay Thompson coming up screens and calling out switches, I think it's a little unfair to ask. To Joe's credit, he didn't try and stick with it for too long. Ground and rock type. Oh, look, there's plenty. Don't get me started on.
Called out.
What do you mean? He's technically right. He also called me out of my Dragon Ball Z references earlier. Fair enough. I did
You
just
better
recently...
come correct with video game and anime references when
Z-Gamer.
Z-Gamers around. The sheriff will get you. Throw you cuffs.
I did just sell my Nintendo 64 and Nintendo Switch, so it's understandable. But like, I understand Joe trying to kind of like overpower them with a fire versus grass, apologies, type approach.
Yeah, but I think that's definitely the thinking. But the Warriors are so small, you only need one of them out there to overpower them, especially Rob. He looked like a man amongst boys, other than when Looney was out there. And even then he was dominating Kevon Looney. So you just can't follow these guys with their off-ball movement and the screens. And man, the miscommunications on that off-ball stuff in that first half was like, I was having hot flashes, man. It was horrible. I thought I was going to pass out. But they figured it out, to their credit, dude. I don't know what Joe told them in the middle of that third quarter. Probably, hey, actually start guarding people. But they really were on point with their switches around 6 minutes in the third quarter until the end of the game. And they just did not let Steph shake free more than a handful of times after that point. And that's all you can ask.
Well, yeah, prior to that halfway point in the third quarter, I think we saw like the worst defensive stretch for the Celtics in this game, where we saw Jordan Poole just get an open look at the rim twice. We saw Klay get an open look at the rim. We saw a wide open Wiggins three, all in quick succession. Then shortly after, there was a Joe timeout, one of few. And although we did get like the greatest timeout of all time in at the end of the game to get us a look to try and wrap it up before overtime.
Why is Rob in on that though?
Yeah.
What are we doing there?
Gone the Rob Lob to end the game there instead of the Jalen curl.
The Jalen curl means you don't get a shot off.
Yeah.
Like both Al and Rob should have been in the game. We were all calling for, if you guys remember, I'm sure you do, the confetti game against the Sixers. It was like everybody kind of cleared out and Brad Stevens drew up this beautiful play to get Al matched up against Robert Covington for a shot that almost rolled out. And I was like, this is the time to roll out one of the classic Brad Stevens ATOs. To not have Rob out there when he just like jumps clear of anyone on the Warriors, like was kind of confusing to me. But so that's okay. But yeah, it's all right.
So I'll throw a few just in the purpose of trying to move on and wrap this thing up so Spoonie can go to bed on time. It's the middle of the day here in Australia, so we're not in any rush.
What do you guys care?
Right. It's Friday afternoon. I'm just finishing up second beer number 2.
Me too.
Feeling good.
Me too, my friend. So a few things, and Spoonie, why don't you pick one of these? The crowd versus Draymond relations, which in our live stream, we didn't get a lot of crowd noise, so maybe we didn't pick up on well. So maybe people in the comments can let us know if that was a factor in this game, the crowd taunting Draymond or not. Jalen Brown looking just mega rusty in his first game back after a bit of an absence there. Sam Hauser not being in the rotation for this game at all. Which of those three do you think is the most important? If any?
Not Sam Hauser does not deserve to be on the court against the Warriors. I can't even imagine where his pants would be around his ankles, dude. Like he would be spinning in circles. So I think we should talk about Jalen and sort of a bizarre game. But it does kind of make sense that if you're missing a week and a half of games and then you come back against the damn Warriors,
Dude.
and
Oh.
Jalen is a dude who I feel like has to play himself into his feel. Like he's not like a natural hooper. As you know what I'm saying? Like KD, like KD could not touch a basketball for a month and go 13 of 15 from the mid range the next game, right? Like Jalen's just not like that. And you could see him just slowly getting more comfortable. And man, did he get comfortable at the right times, because we don't,
my goodness,
we do not win that game without Jalen. Like he got some very tough ISO buckets when we needed them both. And that was a big cojones 3 he hit to tie the game, dude. That was a big time shot.
So yeah, you're 100% right. Jalen in the fourth quarter was 3 for 6, 6 rebounds in the fourth quarter, and you could feel that, right? He once he started to get like that, maybe it was the 3, but he got that little like runner in, like he posts someone up and he kind of throws up that little floater, which has become a staple of Jalen Brown's offensive arsenal this season. Hit 2 of those in the fourth quarter today. He was everywhere, and so he was 3 for 6 in the fourth quarter, and that 3 was obviously among the best. And then he was 2 for 3 in OT with an offensive rebound and 2 assists, 0 turnovers, 1 turnover between fourth quarter and overtime. So as bad as he was in the first 2 and 2.5, 3 quarters, and he was bad.
About as bad as we've seen him in a very long time.
Bad as it gets, really.
I would have taken
Jalen.
Rookie Jalen Brown over that.
Yeah, it was bad. We were like, sure, I don't know, do we just not close with Jalen at this point? And that's why you stick with the stars, right?
Yep.
It's because you know what they can do, and what he did do was be the best number 2 in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And you're welcome, Warriors.
We needed it. Guys, we've got some stuff to move on to unrelated to the game, just to quickly round out this podcast. But before we do, anything else from this game you want to touch on? I feel like as soon as we're done here, I'm going to go and rewatch the game immediately. I've never been more curious to immediately rewatch a game, because I need to watch it like not under the guise of like an emotional weighted blanket.
Terror.
Any other takeaways from this one before we move on?
No, I mean, outside it is important as far as like the overall season goes and standings and like, because the last time we had a game like this, I do think that the way they settled themselves was not going to lead to like a slide. The fact they would actually kind of like, right the ship, but the fact they got the win, that's 8 wins in a row. I feel like now they can, this should give them a lot of confidence. That being said, this team does the thing every once in a while where really good things happen, and you're like, well, this should mean that more good things happen, and then the opposite happens. So
the way,
so we'll see.
Look, when you're a championship contender, the regular season is to learn and fine tune and hone, and I think they can learn a whole hell of a lot from this game, man. Like, just you cut out the avoidable mistakes. And I think this is actually a fairly easy win for the Celtics. Like, they really kept the Warriors in this game by bad. Like, it's one thing if you're going to the rim hard and you get the ball poked out. Like, it's frustrating, but literally just passing it to them multiple times, 2 travels for Tatum. Like, you just knock out those
like dropping it on the baseline.
Yeah, Jalen just not catching the ball. Like, you knock those out, and all of a sudden you're looking like the much better team, because we won this game despite making some of the most boneheaded plays I've ever seen. So a lot to learn. And I'm with you, Jake. I think this will be a big confidence builder. Like, it's got to feel good to be like, we screwed up a bunch and still managed to win. Like, that takes the pressure off you. You know what I mean? It's like, we can make mistakes. And when you're willing to make mistakes, you make less of them because you're not playing tight. So,
yeah, I do think you have to give the Warriors some credit for those mental mistakes and unforced errors on part of the Celtics, because we're making them for the most part because we're intimidated by the Warriors based on our recent track record against them and their overall dominance over like the last decade. I just think they're in our heads. You have to give them some credit.
No doubt.
It's consistent. Like, we consistently make that level of egregious mistakes against that team more than anybody else, except for some reason the Pistons last year. and the OKC Thunder this year. But anyway, moving on. The latest poll results for the All-Star Game voting are in. Jason Tatum, you can see here on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, 3rd overall in front court for the Eastern Conference. Jalen Brown bumped all the way up to 3rd overall for guards in the Eastern Conference. Guys, Spoonie, is it looking like we might get the Jays starting together in the All-Star Game this year? Is that possible or likely?
I don't think Jalen will start. There's only the 2 guard spots, right? So I don't think Jalen has much of a chance, although I can't really... I honestly don't really know how it works anymore. Don't the coaches also, or like the media votes too?
Yeah, so
it's more heavily weighted. Sorry,
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's 50% is the fan vote, and then 50% is coaches and media.
Then yeah, shit.
Ooh, yeah, I mean,
3607.
Timestamp.
I think he could do it. Like
he could, yeah.
I do like listening to like the national pods, like Lowe and Simmons. Like no one like really talks about Jalen's negative stuff. They're far more measured than a lot of Celtics fans and their expectations of what Jalen's been doing. Mitchell's a lock for one of the guard spots,
for sure,
no question. And then it's like Harden, Drew Holiday, Kyrie, like. Garland, Trey, Halliburton, Brunson. I think any of those guys, I think you can make a pretty good case for. I don't think there's anyone there that's a lock. But just the fact that there's that many guys that I probably have on the same level, I think makes it difficult for Jalen to actually start. But it's possible, no question. Yeah, good job by Celtics fans getting him into the top 3. Nice work.
I know, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see the media putting him over Kyrie. So I guess depending on how that shakes out, I think he's got a decent chance. Like Tatum's basically a shoo-in at this point to start, right?
Yeah, great to just even be able to ask the question, like the possibility of those guys starting there. And, there's injuries. I know Donovan Mitchell is injured currently at the moment. Apologies if one of you guys just mentioned that. I was busy queuing up.
I think he's like going to play tomorrow, it sounds like.
Okay. So
he's going to try and play tomorrow. But yeah.
Scratch that. All right, well, we can move on. There was a Keith Smith article on CelticsBlog recently called Celtics Trade Intel. And, we are approaching the trade deadline. It's coming up on the 9th of February. There were a few notable excerpts from that article. I'll just run through a couple here. So there were some quotes and some paragraphs that I've extracted. So league sources indicate the Celtics have been active in trade talks for players who make under $7 million for this season, which indicates that Boston has been trying to use either their $6.9 million traded player exception, which expired today. Is it midnight there yet, Spoonie? Has it expired?
It is 11:04.
Come on, Brad.
I get a trade in the next
Call it in.
minutes.
Come on, Brad. Do something awesome.
So that's from the one-show deal before it expires on January 19th, or the $5.9 million TPE from the Dennis Schroeder trade. As well, one source close to the situation told CelticsBlog it's probably not going to happen. Using a trade exception that requires finding the exact right player, which is hard to pull off. Also, other sources said the Celtics appear to be most focused on adding a wing ahead of the trade deadline instead of a big. One rival told CelticsBlog they want someone else to take the load of Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, and I'll editorialize that by saying that it's largely because Sam Hauser has been incredibly disappointing after an insanely hot start. They go on to say, and this is another quote from an unnamed source, "I bet nothing gets done via trade. Moving another first is risky. That's getting into a place where you're putting very little into the draft. You need those picks to backfill depth behind what's going to be a really expensive roster in a few years' time. I bet they'll be more active in the buyout market." And then there's a lot more to the article. I highly recommend reading it, as well as all the great stuff there on CelticsBlog, particularly Spoonie's articles, of which there are many good ones already. January 19th, that's today. That TPE looks to have expired or be about to expire. January 20, two-way contracts become fully guaranteed, and it seems unlikely at this point that Boston will move on from either J.D. Davison or Fiondu Kabengele.
Love
and
it.
Finally, the 9th of February, the trade deadline, as we mentioned. So, guys, a lot of spiel from me, so I'm going to shut up. Any takeaways from you guys from all of that? I don't know if you got a chance to read the article, but was there any intel that you took from that article that you thought was particularly interesting that maybe you hadn't thought of prior?
Go ahead, Jake.
I'll ask you a question, Spoonie. Like the we need a wing thing versus a big man thing. Probably 24 hours ago, I agreed, and then I've been thinking about it for the last 24 hours. And I'm like, do we really need a wing when the reality is that the Jays are going to play all of the wing minutes? And if they don't, that means one of them is injured and it probably doesn't matter if we bring in another wing to like for the playoffs versus like a big man is a position where insurance is actually something that is realistic to have an impact if necessary versus if we lose a Jay, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I guess you're balancing. Do we spend the assets to get a center that can get us through round 1 and 2 if Rob gets hurt, or versus do we bring in a wing that we know probably won't play in the playoffs but can decrease the load on the Jays during the regular season? I think that's where the real value of bringing a wing is not the playoffs, but more just like, yeah, you're right. They're going to both play 45 minutes a night in the playoffs. So you want them to have enough gas to do that. And so if you bring in a third wing, then you can lower their minutes for the next couple months here leading up into the playoffs, because yeah, they're playing way too much right now. Tatum was at 48 minutes.
Yeah. He is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Man,
48.07. That's
48
more
OC played more than a game.
like the fact that he's able to do this, like he didn't look tired once to me tonight.
No.
Like not really. Like maybe that's where some of the mental errors come in. Like his heart beating through his like eardrums. He's going so hard. He just has like this poker face that he's able to pull off. I just wonder if they have the ability to even play another wing. Like, do they have the mental ability to like play someone over the Jays? Like, you know what I mean?
Like Joe, Joe seems like the dude who he's like got a little bit of Tibbs in him where he likes to ride his best players. Yeah.
Well, and the Jays are the opposite of the Clippers, of the PG and Kawhi. It's like
for now,
Jalen probably shouldn't have played tonight. Like there was no reason to bring him back for tonight's game. And you could kind of feel the rust today, right? I guess it looked physically fine, so maybe that point doesn't make sense. But I question their ability to actually work in another wing if that means like dropping down their minutes. I just think you should be ramping up the minutes of the guys on the roster, like Marcus. I mean, more so Derek specifically. I think can feel a lot of what you need, like. If Derek can play 30-plus minutes against most teams, yeah.
Now I know why you don't want to get a wing. It all makes sense. Derek
you're telling me Derek White didn't play great tonight? And what did he have? We had 17 and a half minutes. He's good to go. Give him 42 in Toronto. He'll take Fred VanVleet to the cleaners.
I just think there's matchups where you just need a bigger body to throw at people. And Grant already has, a pretty big load, and he's not matchup proof. So I don't think there's anything wrong with getting a Jay Rich size guy, or, everybody's talking about Jalen McDaniels. Like me and Jake were on Jalen McDaniels a month ago, dude. We were talking about him forever ago. So, and obviously like PJ Washington's been my pet, target for 6 months now. And I heard on the mismatch, they were like, yeah, what do you think Washington would cost? Like 2 seconds, 3 seconds? Like, I don't think he's worth a first. Go get him. Go get him yesterday. Are you kidding me? There's no way that's true.
Well, I'm trying to, because like all of these prices, I am so not a believer in the idea that Pirtle is going to get a first-round pick for a guy that's about to expire at the center position. Like if you're able to bring in a wing, or even if it is a big man, they have that Houston second rounder. Like if they're able to do it, or some of their other second rounders, like a Fournier move where they got, it was 2 seconds for a Fournier. If you're able to bring someone in at that kind of price, then they should do it. It doesn't have to work. Like, and it can be it's obviously someone maybe not quite as expensive as Fournier, but clearly there wasn't an appetite around the league for Fournier to push the price up of that transaction, right? So because I think they have 4 seconds, right, in the upcoming draft currently, and so. Definitely use 2 of them to bring in someone like Jayshawn Tate. I mean,
yeah, we talked about him a while ago. Dude, that would be nice.
There's plenty of guys around the league that like you should be able to bring in that can play hours of minutes. That like tonight, like when we see Pritchard come in, that flip the energy. Like that's what they need a lot of the nights in like the doldrums of the regular season. It's not a guy that needs to actually score and do stuff. It's just like play defense, get rebounds, push the pace. There's guys out there like that. Yeah, don't suck. Yeah.
We just need to lighten the load on the Jays, especially at the back end of this season. It's been a great start. Obviously the best team in the league right now. They've played a lot of minutes to get us there. And this isn't anything new. I'm not introducing a new concept here. We just need them to play less minutes and be able to get a little bit less mileage in the back end of the season to prepare them for the postseason.
Look, we can play 500 basketball from here and out and win 50 games. You know what I mean? Like, this might be a time where Brad has to like sit Joe down and just be like, I don't care if we go 12-12 over the next month and a half. Like, just stop playing these guys 30. Like, play them 32, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. Like, it's just so funny how it's just not in the DNA of the team at all.
Yeah,
and, like, you look around at the rest of the league, and there's not a lot of guys out there like this, and it's a positive. I don't know. And I was listening to the Rosillo pod last night, and they had Eddie Johnson on that used to play for the Suns, right? And he's talking about he played like back to back, like 40 plus minutes, like each night. And it's like,
insane.
Yeah, it's insanity. And I think the game has gotten more difficult to play with how much like spacing there is today. But yeah, it's something they need to think about. I just don't know like how much of a load is actually having an impact on them. Like how much of the issue in the finals was the mental versus physical. I don't know. Because it feels like it was more mental to me now, like especially seeing tonight, but I don't know.
Yeah, but that tidbit from Keith Smith's piece really makes it sound like the team is very aware that they need to get somebody to take the load off of these guys. So I think if you ask the Jays, they'd be like, no, play me 48 minutes a night, but like they don't know.
I love it.
Yeah,
so
I
much.
love that they just want to hoop, dude,
Yeah.
for sure. But they don't know what's best for themselves.
Yeah.
All right, a couple of things to wrap up here. Otherwise, we are once again at risk of being. I think we can be quite quick with this one. Brian Robb with the tweet. The Warriors are among the teams that have inquired about Peyton Pritchard's trade availability, league sources tell Mass Live. However, the Celtics have shown no interest in moving the guard to this point. Jake, who benefits from this being leaked? Like, who is this serving?
I find all of this very hard to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would the Warriors be wanting Pritchard? Like, they don't need a small point guard. They have Steph, Poole, DiVincenzo. I don't really understand where he fits into that. So I think it's good in the sense that I'm just happy that people are seeing around the league that Pritchard has value. Because I feel like people talk down the idea of Pritchard being like having value in a trade and him being just kind of more like just salary. But I think young teams should value Pritchard. I think he's a rotation player in the league. I would hate to trade the Boston Tea Party. Don't you worry, Justin. I think he's fantastic. But if you're able to kind of like, there's just that logjam at the guard position. The Derek Marcus Brogdon trio is absurd, and Pritchard's it's been a beautiful luxury to have throughout the season. But if you're just kind of able to bring in a Pritchard that's 6 inches taller, that's probably better, unfortunately, for this team. Yeah. And it honestly hurt me to say.
The joke is there to be made, Spoonie. I don't know if you're going to do it or not, but
I'm not. But
okay.
This is definitely a lead. Yeah. No. First of all, hit me with the joke, and then I'll
something
go.
along the lines of us needing to get a larger PP. I don't know.
All right, I nailed
It's
it.
in the back of my mouth.
I'm a little too sophisticated for jokes like that.
Of course. Writes for CelticsBlog now. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
No, I was good. This is definitely a leak from our front office. B-Rob's a Celtics reporter, and it's like, this team wants Pritchard, but we're not trading him. Like, that's definitely to drive up interest for him. 100% self-serving leak, and I love it.
This time of year is you just got to be on your toes. You got to be the most critical thinker you've ever been. Is like now until the trade deadline, you've got to be like, why is this information coming out? Who does it benefit? Because otherwise, if you just take it at face value, a lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense. So that would be just a warning to give everybody.
Absolutely. Let's move on. This is the final thing before we wrap up. On a bit of a sad note, Chris Ford, former Boston Celtic champion, has died, aged 74. If you're in the chat watching this live stream, if you've got any knowledge of Chris Ford, because I think sort of generationally we missed him, like both his coaching tenure and his playing tenure, like was sort of before our time. Got some excerpts from the Associated Press article. Quote, Chris was beloved by his family, friends, and teammates. He had a great love for his family, the city of Boston, the fans, and the entire Celtics family, said the family statement. He always showed humility and respect for all of those that were fortunate enough to be a part of his life. Ford was voted the team's MVP in his first season with Boston. He retired following the 1981-82 season and was an assistant coach for the Celtics for 7 seasons from 83 to 1990, helping coach former teammates Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish to 2 titles in 84 and 86 while serving under coach Casey Jones. He is one of 4 former Celtics to have won championships as both a player and a coach, joining Bill Russell, Tom Heinsohn, and Casey Jones. And there is one other tidbit, factoid about Chris Ford that we discussed in our playback stream. Jake, Spoonie, anyone care to share? Do you remember?
He
Made the first 3-pointer ever.
Genius. Absolutely. Amazing trivia knowledge from both of you. But like, just like to put it bluntly, like obviously a legendary Celtic of which there are many. And while we didn't know a whole lot about Chris Ford before this news was announced, like obviously sad to lose a member of the Celtics family, and he was clearly impactful in his time with the Celtics as both a player and a coach. So sad news, but well celebrated by his family and friends after the fact there. So guys, anything? Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
I was like, I reached out to my dad, who is a far more experienced Boston sports fan than myself, and was like, what's the go on Chris Ford? And I think that the takeaway was, Larry Bird loved him like that, and I think as Celtics fans, we obviously all love Larry Bird, and it's one of those things where, if Larry Bird loves him, then so do I. And Larry Bird's not someone that puts out anything about anything, and he put out like a personal message about Chris Ford, and so the fact that he did that, I think, just speaks to the level of the relationship and the impact that he had on was kind of the golden era of the one of the golden eras of Celtics basketball. So yeah, rest in peace, Big Dog.
Well, look, we are going to just very quickly in his honor watch I believe it's a 1 minute and 5 second highlight clip. Chris Ford, 17 points versus the Rockets in the 1981 NBA Finals Game 3. So check this out.
Bucket getter. It's very choppy on my end, Ben.
Yeah, perfect.
Very choppy.
Yeah.
Little choppy there, guys.
Choppy there. Very choppy there. But it's the thought that counts.
Exactly, yeah. There we go.
We're getting some smoothness.
Kind of smooth stroke, too.
Okay.
Nice little jumper on him.
All right. Here we go.
In the post?
Oh.
Look at that.
Yeah, beauty.
All right. Yeah, Larry will find you. Nice cut. There you go.
Just
42. Al Horford's number.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Legend.
Yeah. The catch and shoot
sniper.
mid-range. Catch and shoot mid-range. You don't see that very often nowadays.
No. Just a great pass. We're going to run the floor.
Nice
Tommy would be
finish.
proud.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So we obviously got some stuff to work out with the YouTube sharing and it being quite choppy on the pod. But Chris Ford, very sorry to hear that news, but a wonderful Celtic in his time. So we had to at least mention that. Guys, amazing game today. Before we wrap up, any parting thoughts before we call this one a day?
Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Just one game. Keep it
8 in a row.
8 in a row.
8 in a row, baby.
Yeah.
All right. That is going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us. The Green with Envy guys are going to be back with another podcast on this feed on Sunday night. We'll be back around Tuesday. Spoonie, Jake, love your work, guys. Until next time, go Celtics.